I have served in the void for 61 cycles. I have stood at the rail of 9 warships. I have watched stars die slow, and I have watched fleets die fast, and I thought, by my shell and my ancestors, that I had seen everything worth fearing. Then I watched one human girl make an admiral beg. Let me tell it the way it happened, not the way the records tell it. The records are clean, they lie by being clean. My name is Recitan. I am Koss of the Spireborn line, and back then I was a sensor officer aboard the Coalition station Halcyon Reach, a great gray ring spinning at the edge of the Tansuk Drift, where 4 empires met and none of them trusted the other 3. We were neutral ground, a trading throat. Ships came, ships left, and we counted them and taxed them and tried very hard not to start a war. That was the job: count the ships, don't start the war. We were very bad at the second part. You have to understand what the station looked like to know why nobody noticed her. Halcyon Reach was loud. Not loud like noise, loud like too much. The trade deck never slept. There were Vorne merchants with their long silver arms folded behind them, walking like they owned the floor. There were Drathani pilots, 6 of them to a clutch, chittering and arguing over fuel prices. There were my own people, slow and heavy and patient, manning the customs gates. The air smelled of 9 different worlds at once: coolant, fried protein, somebody's incense, the wet iron tang of the Vorne. Lights everywhere, signs in 12 scripts. The deck plates hummed under your feet like a held breath. And in all that noise the humans had one small office. One. Earth had only joined the Coalition 11 cycles before. They were new. They were small. Most species had never met one in person, and the ones who had came away unimpressed. Humans were soft, slow healing, short-lived. They had no plating, no venom, no second heart. They got cold. They got tired. Half of them needed a strange ritual called sleep for a third of every day, lying down completely defenseless, eyes shut, in the middle of a hostile galaxy. We laughed about that, the Koss, quietly. The way you laugh about a child who insists on carrying a knife too big for its hand. So when Earth sent a single liaison officer to Halcyon Reach, nobody rolled out a welcome. They sent her in on a cargo hauler, 3rd class, no escort. I remember the manifest crossing my screen. 1 human. Rank, ensign. Name, Cady Mwangi. I almost flagged her as freight. I met her on her 2nd day. I was off shift, getting protein at the deck cantina, and she sat down across from me without asking. Just sat, tray of gray paste, small thing, dark skin, hair cropped close, a uniform that had been pressed so carefully you could tell she'd done it herself because she had nobody to do it for her. "You're a sensor officer," she said, not a question. I clicked my mandibles, which is how my people show we're surprised. "How do you know this?" "Coolant burn on your left sleeve, the old kind, from a sensor relay panel. And you keep looking at the departure board even though you're eating." "Habit," she shrugged, eating her paste like it didn't taste like wet sand. "I notice things. It's most of my job." "I want you to remember that. I notice things." She said it like an apology, like it was a small, embarrassing thing to be. We talked. She asked good questions. Not nosy, good. She wanted to know which ships came through regular, which captains paid their docking fees late, which species sat at which tables and never mixed. She wasn't gathering secrets. She was learning the room. The way a sailor learns the weather before a storm she can already feel in her joints. I liked her. I won't pretend I didn't, looking back. But I also didn't think she'd last 6 cycles out here. She was so young. By human reckoning, maybe 24 of their years. And humans, you understand, break. I had no idea what they break into. The trouble came 40 cycles later, and it came wearing Vorne silver. The Vorne Ascendancy was the biggest power touching the drift. They had the fleet. Everyone knew the number: 1,100 warships, line-rated plus pickets. The Coalition had maybe a third of that, scattered across 9 systems. The only reason the Vorne hadn't simply taken the drift was that taking it would cost them, and the Vorne were proud, and proud things hate to bleed. But a proud thing will move the moment it thinks bleeding is off the table. It started with a docking. A Vorne diplomatic cruiser called the Eternal Patience, and let me tell you, when the Vorne name a warship Patience, you check your exits, requested berth at Halcyon Reach. Routine, they said. Resupply. We had no grounds to refuse a coalition signatory. I tracked it in on my board. Diplomatic cruiser, my shell. The mass reading was wrong, too heavy. Diplomatic ships don't mass like that. They carry envoys and wine. They don't carry whatever was sitting in that hull pushing the gravimetric needle into the red. I sent the flag up the chain. Anomalous mass, possible concealed armament. And the answer came back down the chain from our own station director, a soft, fat Drathani named Alu who had never in his life wanted a problem. Do not provoke them, let them dock. So we let them dock. This is the part the records get wrong. The records say the Vorne arrived under diplomatic flag and a misunderstanding followed. There was no misunderstanding. The Vorne came to take the station. They'd done the arithmetic. One cruiser, 140 Marines in the hold, and a coalition garrison of 40 tired officers who'd never fired a shot in anger. They didn't need the fleet. They brought one ship because one ship was an insult. They wanted us to know we weren't worth more. And they were right to think so. Almost. Their commander came across the gangway like he was already the landlord. Sub-Admiral Vorne Tau. I will never unsee him. Tall Vorne are all tall, silver-skinned, 4 arms folded in that mocking patient way, a crest of bone over the eyes that they grow longer with rank. His was very long. He walked onto our trade deck flanked by 20 Marines in hard plate, weapons not drawn but visible, and the whole deck went quiet the way a forest goes quiet before something large moves through it. Director Alu waddled out to meet him, all smiles and trembling. Sub-Admiral, welcome, we are honored. This station is under emergency ascendancy stewardship, Vorne said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Effective now. Your garrison will surrender arms to my Marines. Civilians may continue trade. Coalition personnel will be confined pending transfer. This is a lawful action under the Drift Security Accords, Article 9. There is no Article 9. He invented it on the spot, in front of 400 witnesses, and dared anyone to know the law better than he did. Nobody moved. Alu opened and closed his mouth. Our garrison stood frozen at their posts, hands near weapons they all knew they couldn't win with. 140 Vorne Marines were stacked in that hull 2 corridors away. We were already lost. Everyone in that room did the math and got the same answer. Everyone except one. She came out of the human office. She had no Marines. She had no fleet. She had a sidearm she hadn't drawn and a datapad in her hand, and she was so much smaller than everyone around her that the Marines didn't even track her as a threat. She walked up beside Alu, planted her boots, looked all the way up at Sub-Admiral Vorne Tau and said, "There's no Article 9. The whole deck heard it. The whole deck froze on it. Vorne looked down at her, slow, amused, the way you look at an insect that has made a noise. And what are you, little thing? Ensign Cady Mwangi, Terran liaison, coalition signatory representative. She didn't blink. And I said there's no Article 9. The Drift Security Accords end at Article 6. I read them on the way out here, all of them, twice. It was a long flight. A few of the Drathani merchants made a sound, half a laugh, strangled before it finished. Vorne's crest twitched. That's a Vorne losing patience. Article 9, he said again, slower, is whatever I say it is, while my Marines stand on your deck. Sure, said Cady. Right now it is. I'm not arguing the Marines. I'm just putting it on the record that you lied, because the record's going to matter later and I want it clear who said what. I was watching from the sensor gallery above and I remember thinking, child, what are you doing? He will break you in half for sport. I had my claw on the alarm. I didn't press it. To this day I don't know why. Maybe because she was so calm. People that calm usually know something you don't. She did. Vorne decided to make an example of her. I understood it later. He needed the deck to see fear fast before anyone got brave, and the smallest, weakest thing in the room mouthing off was a gift. "Take her," he said. 2 Marines moved, big ones hard-plated, each twice her mass. And here is the part I have told and retold for 40 cycles, and people still don't believe me, and I don't care because I was there. She let them. She didn't fight. She didn't run. She put her hands behind her back before they reached her, made it easy, kept her eyes on Vermick the entire time. They cuffed her. One of them shoved her toward the holding alcove, and she stumbled and went down hard on the deck plate on her knees. And you heard it, that wet human sound, the kind we don't make, and a hiss went through the watching crowd. And Cady Mwangi, on her knees, blood on her lip, looked up at the most powerful person on the station and smiled. "You should check your reactor schedule," she said. Vermick paused. "What?" "Your reactor schedule," she repeated, climbing back to her feet, slow, deliberate, like the fall had been a thing she'd chosen. "Diplomatic cruiser, right? Eternal patience. I pulled your public manifest the second you requested berth. You're running a Tier 4 core. Tier 4 cores need a hard cooldown every 200 hours or they fault. Yours is at 209. You've been running hot to get here fast." She tilted her head. "You came in a hurry, Sub-Admiral. Why'd you come in a hurry?" The deck was silent. "It doesn't matter," Vermick said, but his crest had gone still, and a still crest on a Vorne is not calm. It's the opposite. It's a creature deciding whether it has miscalculated. "It matters a lot," Cady said, "because a faulting Tier 4 core docked to a station with the umbilical locked." She nodded at the docking clamp telltales over the gangway. "Green, engaged. That's not your problem anymore. That's our problem. Mass casualty. Both ships. Everyone on this deck." She let it sit. "So before your Marines do anything that makes me an interesting hostage, I'd think real hard about who actually needs who to stay calm right now." I checked the Eternal Patience's core readings from my board. My claws went cold. She was right. The core was hot. Not critical, not yet, but hot and overdue, and every word she'd said was true. She hadn't bluffed. That was the thing nobody on the Vorne side understood yet. She wasn't lying to him. She was just the only one in the room who'd done the reading. Vermick recovered fast. Give him that. He was a soldier under all the arrogance. "Then we will undock and resolve our core externally," he said. "And we will take the station when we return. Nothing changes for you, little thing. You have delayed your conquest by an afternoon." "You can't undock," Cady said. "My ship." "Can't undock," she said again, and now there was something else under her voice, something flat and certain that made even me go still. "Because 40 minutes ago, when your gangway extended and your clamps engaged, your docking computer handshook with ours. Standard. Automatic. And our docking control runs on a coalition mutual safety protocol that locks the clamps the instant a core anomaly is flagged on either side." She held up her datapad. "Guess who flagged a core anomaly on the Eternal Patience 41 minutes ago? The second you crossed the threshold, and I got your live telemetry." She turned the datapad around so he could see it. "Me," she said. "I flagged it. Manually. Logged, timestamped, signed. Your clamps are locked, Sub-Admiral, from our side. And the only authority that can release a safety lock during an active core anomaly is the flagging officer." "Silence." "You," Vermick said slowly. "Me," she agreed. And the whole shape of the room changed. I felt it go through the deck like a pressure wave. 140 Marines. 1,100 warships back home. A fleet that could glass our station from orbit. And all of it, was bolted to Halcyon Reach by a docking clamp that one 24-year-old human had locked shut and put the only key behind her own teeth. He could kill her. Of course he could kill her. But the lock didn't release on her death. It released on her command. And dead people don't give commands. She'd made herself the one thing the most powerful man in the system could not afford to harm. And she'd done it on her knees, bleeding, smiling, while we all thought she was already beaten. I noticed things she'd told me like it was nothing. I want to stop here and tell you something about humans, because this is where I started to learn it, and it took me a long time, and I think it's the most important thing I know. We always asked the wrong question about them. We asked, are they strong? And the answer was no. They're not strong. A Vorne Marine could break a human's arm without effort. We'd seen it in the early skirmishes before Earth joined, humans dying in droves, soft and slow, exactly as weak as they looked. But strength was never their weapon. We just couldn't see the real one because we don't have it. Humans plan to lose. That's the thing. Every other species in the galaxy, when it walks into a room, walks in asking, how do I win? Humans walk in asking, if this goes wrong, how do I make sure you don't win either? They think about the end while everyone else is thinking about the start. They are a species that evolved on a single fragile world, knowing the whole time that the world could kill them, that they were never the strongest thing on it, and so they got clever in a specific, frightening way. They got clever about leverage, about the moment after the moment you think you've won. Cady Mwangi walked onto that gangway already knowing she could not beat the Vorne, so she never tried to. She just made sure that if she lost, everybody lost together. And she did it 41 minutes before anyone knew there was a fight. That's not strength. That's so much worse than strength. Release the lock, Vermick said. No, said Cady. I will have my Marines. Do anything to me and the lock holds and your core faults in. She glanced at the pad. About 90 minutes, give or take. Maybe less the way you've been redlining it. Then we all die together and your 1,100 ships explain to the Ascendancy how their sub-admiral lost a cruiser, 140 Marines, and a diplomatic incident to one station because he couldn't keep his temper around a girl. She let the corner of her mouth go up. How long's your bone crest, sub-admiral? Looks long. Looks like you've been climbing a while. You want it ending here. I watched a Vorne sub-admiral, commander of a line cruiser, do the thing his entire culture is built to never do. I watched him hesitate. What do you want? He said, quiet now, the landlord voice gone. 3 things, Cady said, and she counted them on her fingers slow so the whole deck could see. 1. Your Marines stand down and return to your hull, not the station, your hull. Now, 2. You withdraw the stewardship claim on the record signed with the lie about Article 9 retracted in front of these witnesses, because I meant it when I said the record matters. And 3, Vermick said. She looked at him for a long moment. 3, she said. You let my engineers help you cool your core, properly, before it faults and kills both ships anyway. She shrugged, and for the first time something almost gentle crossed her face. I locked your clamps to keep you here, Sub-Admiral. I didn't do it to watch 140 people burn. I did it so you'd talk instead of take. That's the whole trick. That's all I've got. I just needed you to stop long enough to do the math the way I already did it. And that was the thing that broke him. Not the threat. The mercy attached to the threat. He'd come expecting a conquest or a massacre, the only 2 outcomes his mind had room for, and instead this small, soft creature had built a trap whose only exit was survival for everyone, and made him choose it. He stood there, 4 arms slowly unfolding, and I swear by my shell I saw the exact instant the Sub-Admiral understood that he had never been in any danger of dying. He'd been in danger of being outthought. To a Vorne, that's worse. He gave the order. The Marines fell back. You could feel 40 officers on our deck start breathing again all at once. His engineers and ours met at the umbilical under Cady's watch, and she stood there the whole time, cuffs still on her wrists because nobody had thought to remove them and she hadn't asked, directing traffic with her chin and her quiet flat voice, until the eternal patience's core dropped out of the red, and the danger that she herself had weaponized was gone. Only then did she let them undock. And as the eternal patience pulled back from the ring, Sub-Admiral Vermick Tal sent one last transmission to the station, not to Director Alu, not to the Coalition. To her, Ensign Mwangi, a pause. When my superiors ask who held Halcyon Reach against the Ascendancy, I will tell them the truth. A garrison of 40 did not hold it. Another pause longer. One did. The channel closed. I went down to the trade deck. I found her sitting on a crate near the human office, cuffs finally off, holding a cloth to her split lip, looking smaller than ever now that the deck had remembered how to move around her. People were giving her a wide berth, not out of contempt anymore, out of something they didn't have a word for yet. I sat down beside her. My old joints complained. "You were on your knees," I said, "bleeding, and you smiled." She dabbed her lip. "Had to. If I'd looked scared, he'd have known I had nothing but the lock." She gave a tired little laugh. "I did have nothing but the lock, Ressa. That was it. The whole hand. One clamp and a manifest I read on the way out. You let them cuff you. Cuffs don't matter when you're holding the only key that does." She closed her eyes. "I notice things. It's most of my job. You'd be amazed how often that's enough." That should have been the end of it. A clever defense. A footnote. Local liaison prevents station seizure, no shots fired. Alu wrote it up exactly that boring on purpose, because boring doesn't start wars. But the Vorne don't forget being outthought. And the Ascendancy doesn't let a sub-admiral come home empty-clawed and call it patience. 40 cycles later they came back, not with one cruiser. With the fleet. And when their flagship hailed Halcyon Reach across half a system, the new fleet admiral, older, colder, 1,100 ships at his back, did not ask to speak to our director. He did not ask for the coalition. He did not threaten the garrison. He asked by name, in a voice the whole station heard, for one human girl. He asked for Cady Mwangi. And every soul on that deck understood, in that moment, what had become true while we weren't watching. The largest fleet in the drift had come back with everything it had, because it had decided that one girl in a pressed uniform was the only thing on that station worth being afraid of. You have to understand what 1,100 ships look like on a sensor board. I'd been a sensor officer for 61 cycles. I'd seen task forces. I'd seen a Drathani migration fleet once, 10,000 ships, but those were haulers and homes, soft things drifting. This was different. This was every contact rated red, line cruisers, strike carriers, pickets in a screen so tight it looked solid. They came out of the drift in formation, slow, deliberate, the way you walk when you want the other person to watch you coming and have time to be afraid. They didn't rush. That was the message. We are not in a hurry. You are not worth a hurry. We will arrive exactly when we choose. My board went red corner to corner, every threat rating maxed. I had never seen it do that. I didn't know it could do that. The whole sensor gallery had gone silent around me, 15 officers staring at the same red wall. And then the hail came through, and the whole station heard it, because the Fleet Admiral wanted the whole station to hear it. "This is Fleet Admiral Sarek Vane of the Vorne Ascendancy." Old voice, dry as bone dust, a voice that had outlived everyone who'd ever frightened it. 40 cycles ago, this station denied a lawful ascendancy action through deception and threat. That stain has not been forgotten. The ascendancy does not return to negotiate. It returns to correct. A pause. "Produce the human, the one called Mwangi. She will answer for what she did before this station does. Refuse and the correction begins with your reactor and ends with your hull. You have 1 hour." The channel cut, and the silence after it was the loudest thing I have ever heard. I found her in the human office, same small room, same single desk. She was standing at the window port, watching the red wall fill the sky, and she didn't turn around when I came in. 1,100, she said. "Is that the real count, or are some of them ghosts?" "I checked twice," I said. "It's real, maybe a few transponder echoes, not many." She nodded slowly. 40 cycles. He brought 1,100 ships and waited 40 cycles for the political cover to do it. A short breath that wasn't quite a laugh. I made one sub-admiral look foolish in front of a deck of merchants, and it cost them 1,100 ships worth of pride to fix. She shook her head. That's a lot of feelings for one species to carry, Ressa. They will not hurt you, I said, and I believed it when I said it, the way you believe a thing because you can't bear the alternative. We will hide you. There are maintenance voids below the trade deck, the old ring, no sensors. Ressa, she turned around. She looked tired. Not scared. I'd watched her be not scared on her knees with blood on her mouth. I knew what it looked like, but tired all the way down. He's not going to glass the station if I run. He's going to glass it because I run. The whole point is the correction. If I hide, I prove I'm worth hunting, and they take the station apart looking for me and call it justice. She rubbed her face. The only way this doesn't end with 400 people dead on this deck is if I walk out there and stand where he can see me. That's surrender, I said. No, she said, and something came back into her eyes, the thing I'd seen on the gangway. Surrender's when you've got nothing left. I've still got a manifest to read. This is where the records go fully blank, by the way. There's no recording of what happened next. She made sure of that. I only know it because I was the one she pulled into it, and I have never told it whole until now. She didn't go to Director Alu. Alu would have tried to negotiate, and you can't negotiate with 1,100 ships. You can only give them what they came for, and what they came for was her. She didn't go to the coalition garrison. 40 officers against a fleet is just 40 funerals. She came to me. I need 3 things, she said, and I almost laughed because it was the same words she'd used on Vermek, counted on the same fingers. 1. Every scrap of telemetry you can pull off that fleet without them knowing you're looking, passive only. I don't want a single active ping going their way. 2. The original incident log from 40 cycles ago. The real one with my core anomaly flag still timestamped in it, not the boring version Alu filed. She paused. 3. I need you to trust me for about 50 minutes even when it looks insane. Can you do that? It already looks insane, I said. Then you're ahead. Here is what she'd noticed. Here is what nobody else had, because nobody else was looking at the right thing. We were all looking at the fleet. 1,100 ships, the size of it, the red wall. That's what a threat wants you to look at, the biggest part of itself. Cady looked at the formation. They're flying tight, she said, pulling my passive telemetry onto the human office's little screen, sketching with one finger. Tighter than they need to. Way tighter. Look at the picket screen. They're holding station keeping inside 50 meters of each other. You don't fly a fleet that tight unless you're showing off. Unless the whole point is the display. She tapped the cluster at the center. And a fleet flying for display, holding tight formation, with every ship station keeping off the flagship's beacon. What's the one thing the entire formation depends on? I looked, 61 cycles of sensor work, and I saw it the moment she made me look. The flagship's navigation beacon, I said slowly. They're all slave to it. Tight formation, no drift, they're not flying independent solutions. They're following the flag's beacon to hold the wall. Right, she was very still. 1,100 ships flying as one big, intimidating shape, and the shape only holds because they're all reading off one beacon, which means the shape isn't 1,100 problems. She looked up at me. It's one problem, 1,100 times. You can't shut off their beacon, I said. It's on the flagship, behind the whole fleet, we can't touch it. No, she agreed, but I don't need to shut it off. That corner of her mouth again, the one I'd learned to be afraid of in the best way. I just need to make them stop trusting it. I want to be honest about something, because this story gets told as if she was magic, and she wasn't, and the truth is better. She was not certain it would work. I was there. Her hands shook while she set it up. She made me check her math twice and then a third time because a third of a station died if she was wrong. She was a 24-year-old who had been awake for 19 hours building a bluff out of a sensor quirk and a 40-cycle-old log file, and she was terrified and she did it anyway. That's the part that matters, not that she was fearless. That she was full of fear and used it like fuel instead of letting it use her. Here's what she built. 40 cycles ago, when the Eternal Patience docked, Her core anomaly flag had gone into the Coalition mutual safety system, the same system that locked the clamps. That flag carried a Coalition authentication signature, a real one, logged, time-stamped, legally binding across every signatory, including, and this was the whole game, including the Vorne Ascendancy, who'd signed the Drift security accords with their own fleet authentication keys. The Vorne fleet's beacon broadcast on Coalition standard navigation channels. It had to. That's how mutual traffic safety worked. That's the price of using shared space. And anything broadcasting on a Coalition standard channel could, in theory, receive a Coalition standard safety flag. I can't turn off their beacon, Cady said, fingers flying. But I can send a Coalition core anomaly safety flag, properly authenticated with the 40-cycle-old Vorne signature still sitting in our incident log, addressed to the flagship's navigation transponder. A real flag, real signature. The system will read it as legitimate because it is legitimate, it's their own key. And the flag says one thing. What? It says the flagship's beacon is reporting a navigation hazard fault. She didn't look up. Same protocol that locked the clamps. The safety system, by their own signed agreement, will flag the beacon as unreliable. And here's the thing about 1,100 ships flying tight formation off one beacon, Ressa. Now she looked up. The instant that beacon is flagged unreliable, every single ship's nav computer automatically, no human in the loop fast enough to stop it, has to assume the formation solution might be wrong. Collision risk. So they all do the only safe thing. They break formation, I whispered. They have to break formation, she said. It's hard-coded, safety override. 1,100 ships all slave to one beacon, all told at once the beacon's bad, they scatter to safe separation distance. The wall comes apart, not because I beat them, because their own safety system that they signed onto with their own keys does exactly what it's built to do. And then what? I said. They scatter, they realize nothing's wrong, they reform in 10 minutes and they're angrier. Yeah, Cady said. They would, if I let it be a trick. She sat back. That's the part everyone gets wrong about this kind of thing. The bluff isn't the weapon. The bluff just makes the room. What you do with the room is the whole thing. She opened a channel, not encrypted. Wide open, station-wide, fleet-wide, the kind of channel the whole drift could hear. Exactly like Vermic had done to her 40 cycles back. She'd learned that too. Fleet Admiral Sarek Vane, she said. This is Cady Mwangi. You asked for me by name. Here I am. A pause from the other side. Then the dry bone voice. Then you understand what comes next, human. I understand you brought 1,100 ships to a station of 400 people to correct one girl who embarrassed your ascendancy, Cady said. I understand that. What I want you to understand before you give your order is that your fleet is flying on a beacon I can flag unreliable anytime I choose, with your own signed authentication from 40 cycles ago, still sitting in my log. A pause. I'm not going to do it as an attack. I want to be clear. I could have done it the second you arrived and scattered your wall and made you look like Vermic looked. I didn't. Want to know why? Silence on the channel, but the silence was listening. I could feel the whole drift leaning in. Because that's the move you're expecting, Cady said. You came here expecting a clever human with a trick. You've already decided how that story ends. You crush the trick, you take the station, you go home with your correction. You planned for me to fight. Her voice dropped, quiet and even and somehow louder than the fleet. So I'm not going to. I'm going to do the thing you didn't plan for, Admiral. I'm going to tell you the truth and let you choose. There's a thing I figured out about your people, Cady said into the open channel. 40 cycles ago, watching Vermic, you're proud. Genuinely proud, not just arrogant. There's a difference. Arrogance breaks when you push it. Pride doesn't. Pride you can only redirect. A breath. Vermic came here to take a station with one ship as an insult. And when I beat him, the insult got bigger, and your ascendancy couldn't carry it. So here you are with 1,100 ships to make the insult go away. You will not lecture the ascendancy on. I'm not lecturing, I'm reading your manifest. That same flat certainty. You've got 1,100 ships out here, Admiral, 40 cycles, the political cover to do it. That's not a strike force, that's the entire drift wing. You emptied a whole frontier of warships and brought them to one station for one girl. You know what that tells me? She let it land. It tells me your ascendancy can't afford to look weak right now. Somewhere out there, somebody's testing you. The Drathani. The Coalition Core Worlds. Somebody. Because you don't move a whole wing for pride unless pride is the only thing you've got spare to spend. A pause. Your border's thin behind you, isn't it, Admiral? You stripped it to come here. The silence on the channel changed. I have heard a lot of silences. This one had a crack in it. And if I scatter your formation right now, Cady went on, gentle, almost kind, with your own signature broadcast wide open so the whole drift sees the Vorne Ascendancy's flagship beacon flagged unreliable by a 40-cycle-old log file. If I make 1,100 of your ships break and run from a station of 400, then everybody who's testing you right now learns that the entire drift wing can be scattered by one ensign with a manifest. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I won't have beaten your fleet, Admiral. I'll have beaten your whole border, and you'll spend the next 40 cycles paying for it. Nobody breathed, not on the station, not, I think, on the fleet. So here's what I'm offering, Cady said. I don't flag your beacon, you don't take the station. We both walk away whole, and the story the drift hears is whatever you want it to be: a diplomatic resolution, a show of ascendancy, restraint, mercy from a position of strength. You get to be the admiral who chose not to crush a small station. That's a good story, Admiral. That's a strong story. A pause. Or you give your order, and I give mine, and we find out together whether your border survives what the drift learns about you in the next 60 seconds. She sat back from the console. You came to correct one girl, she said. I'm giving you a way to go home stronger than you came. Take it, or don't. But you've got about a minute to decide, and the whole drift is watching you think. I watched the fleet on my board. For a long time, too long, my heart's climbing into my throat, nothing happened. 1,100 red contacts holding the wall. Holding. Then the wall moved. Not scattered, not the safety break she'd threatened. Something slower, more deliberate. The picket screen eased back. The strike carriers rotated off their attack heading. The whole formation, ship by ship, came down off its threat posture, like a creature unclenching a fist one finger at a time, because uncurling it all at once would look like flinching. The flagship turned, and the dry bone voice came back on the open channel, and the whole drift heard Fleet Admiral Sarek Vane of the Vorne Ascendancy say, "The Ascendancy has reviewed this matter. The original action 40 cycles past was undertaken without proper authority by Sub-Admiral Vermek Tau, exceeding his mandate. The Ascendancy bears no quarrel with Halcyon Reach and extends, as a demonstration of its strength and restraint, a formal withdrawal from the drift sector." A pause that cost him more than the whole fleet. "Ensign Mwangi, your conduct is noted." The channel cut, and 1,100 ships turned around and went home. The trade deck didn't cheer. I want you to know that. There was no cheering. It was too big for cheering. 400 people stood on that deck and watched the largest fleet in the drift withdraw from a station it had come to erase, and the silence held and held, and then somewhere a Drathani merchant started to laugh, that high broken chitter, and it spread, not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was weeping and nobody wanted to be the first. I found her still in the human office. She hadn't moved from the console. Her hands were flat on the desk, pressed down hard, and when I came in I realized she was holding them down so I wouldn't see them shake. "He could have called it," she said, not looking at me, "right at the end. He could have decided his pride was worth his border and given the order anyway. I read him right, but I wasn't sure, Ressa. I'm never sure. You can't be sure of a person." "You did the reading," I said. She laughed, wet and cracked. "I did the reading." I sat down beside her. My old joints complained, the way they had on the crate 40 cycles ago. "You told me once," I said, "that you notice things, that it's most of your job. You said it like it was small." "It is small," she said. I said. I have watched you twice now do the thing your whole species does that no other species in this galaxy can do, and I finally understand it, and I have to tell you because I'm old and I won't get many more chances. I clicked my mandibles the way we do when a thing is true. Every other people in the drift, when they walk into a room, they ask, how do I win? The Vorne asked it. Vermek asked it. Sarek Vane asked it 1100 times over. I looked at her. You never ask that. Not once. You walk into the room already certain you'll lose, and you ask the other question, the one nobody else thinks to ask. What question? She said quietly. What is the other one afraid of? I said. You don't look for your strength, you haven't got any, you said so yourself, and you're right, you're soft and slow and you sleep. So you stopped looking for your strength 40 cycles ago and you started looking for their fear. The clamp wasn't your weapon. The beacon wasn't your weapon. Their fear was the weapon. You just kept finding it and handing it back to them and letting them defeat themselves with it. I shook my head slowly. Sarek Vane brought 1100 ships, and the one thing he was most afraid of was already standing on this deck. And he knew it. That's why he asked for you by name. Not the garrison. Not the coalition. You. Because the most frightening thing in the drift was never the fleet. She didn't say anything for a long moment. It was a girl who reads the manifest, she said finally. It was a girl who reads the manifest, I agreed. They gave her a medal, eventually. Coalition Star, First Class. There's a ceremony recording. She stood very straight and said thank you, and you'd never know, watching it, that her hands had shaken for an hour afterward in a maintenance void below the trade deck where she thought nobody could see her, and where I found her because I am a sensor officer, and noticing things is most of my job too, and I learned that from her. She served 11 more cycles on Halcyon Reach. The Vorne never came back. Other things came, the drift is the drift, but they came to talk now because the story had gotten out, the real one, the one I'm telling you, and the story said, there is a human on that station who has never once tried to win, and who has never once lost. That's the most frightening reputation in the galaxy, if you think about it. We're all so busy trying to be the strongest thing in the room. And then a species comes along that doesn't care about being strongest at all, that walks in soft and slow and short-lived, already planning for the worst, already reading your manifest, already 3 moves into the game you didn't know had started, and asks the one question that unmakes you. What are you afraid of? We laughed at them once, the humans, soft little things who sleep a third of their lives away, defenseless, eyes shut, in a galaxy full of teeth. I don't laugh anymore. I lie down at the end of my shift in the dark, and I close my eyes the way they taught me isn't weakness. And I think about a girl on her knees with blood on her lip, smiling up at the most powerful man in the system, because she'd already read the manifest, and she'd already found his fear, and she was just waiting, patient as a held breath, for him to figure out that the most dangerous thing on the station was the one he'd dismissed. They dismissed the girl in uniform. They feared her more than the entire fleet. And in the end, every single one of them was right to.